I've tested a lot of different budgeting apps over the years, and Monarch is still at the top. I've been using Monarch for over 4 years, and today I'm going to walk you through exactly how to set up your budget. Before we jump into the steps, let me show you what budgeting looks like inside of Monarch. There are actually two different ways to set up your budget inside of Monarch, the category method and the flex method. There are pros and cons to each one. I'll show you both and you can decide what works best for you. With the category method, this is what that is going to look like. You're going to have these bigger groupings here, and each of these groups will have specific categories underneath each one of the groups. And for each one of these categories that are underneath each one of these groups, then you will assign a dollar amount for each one in order to create your budget in the category method approach. With this style of budgeting, you are going to be able to have as many of these groups as you want, so you're going to have a lot of flexibility if you choose that category method of budgeting. If you are using that flex method, then instead of having an unlimited number of groups, you're going to be looking at your money from three big groups or three big buckets: the fixed, the flexible, and the non-monthly. The fixed are your bills, your monthly recurring expenses. The flexible, that's your everyday spending, your spend freely money. And the non-monthly are the expenses that come up throughout the year but don't happen every single month. So with this type of budgeting, in the flexible section, you do not have to assign a dollar amount to each of these individual categories. You can just assign an overall amount and try to stay within that overall number. You can assign dollar amounts to some of these. You might choose to assign one for something like groceries or shopping, one or two of them where you're trying to reduce your spending and trying to stay within that set limit for that category, but you don't need to do it for every single category that is listed under this flexible section. The primary one is the big overall number. How much do you want to spend on your everyday spending right here and stay within that target. And then you also have the non-monthly section where you're going to be setting aside money that you want to save throughout the year for upcoming expenses. That's where we're headed. Here are the steps we're going to walk through together to get you there. Step 1 is to connect your accounts. Step 2 is to rename your accounts. Step 3 is to customize your categories. Step 4 is to review your transactions, set up rules and tags. And step 5 is to create your budget. All right, let's get into it. The first thing you want to do before you do anything else is to connect your accounts, and I mean all of them. So any checking accounts, credit cards, or other cash accounts that you spend money from. You'll want to make sure that all of these spending accounts are connected in Monarch so that it can give you an accurate picture of your actual spending. So in order to do that, you are going to click on the accounts button if you're not already on the accounts tab, and then at the very top right, you'll click on add account. And from here, you'll be able to add your specific bank accounts, credit cards, and other accounts. If you run into any issues connecting via Plaid, Monarch does have some different options to connect, but hopefully you'll be able to get everything in there so you can get an accurate spending picture. Once you have all of your accounts connected, the next thing I recommend doing is renaming your accounts. By default, most of your accounts are going to come through based on their account numbers. For instance, you might see Chase Checking 0000 or Chase Savings 0123. Instead of leaving it as that, rename them to something that makes sense to you. So instead of Chase Checking 000, maybe it's Chase Spending Account or Chase Bills Account or Chase Travel Fund. Rename those accounts so it's easy for you to know what you're looking at a glance when you log into Monarch. To rename your accounts, you're going to scroll down to the account that you're interested in, you'll select it, and then at the top right there's an edit button, and then you'll click on edit account, and from here you can just change the name to what you want it to be. You don't need to change anything else in here. Scroll down to the bottom, click on save, and now it's going to update the names on those accounts. Before we get to the budget, we need to customize your categories. Monarch comes with about 60 categories right out of the box. This can be a little bit overwhelming because it is so many, so we're going to go and trim that down. So in order to get there, we're going to go to settings. There are two ways to get there. You can click on your name at the bottom left and then click on settings, or at the very top left, you can click on the settings icon. From here, you will find categories, and then this is where we are going to update those categories. There are three main types of categories inside of Monarch: income, expenses, and transfers. Income is money coming in, expenses is money going out, and transfers is money moving around. Transfers do not show up in your budget. So anything that is categorized as a transfer is not going to show up as money going out or money coming in. When you're inside of here, this is where you're going to make those edits to your categories. You can combine, rename, disable so that it is more reflective of how you spend and earn money. So in that income section, it's going to have generic stuff like paychecks, business income, other income. You can rename that to be Natasha's paychecks or Damien's paychecks or whatever your name is. If you have a partner that you are sharing your money with, I would recommend to create a category and to add their income as well, so you can have those two incomes separate. In order to do that, I'm in the income section, so I'll just click on create category. Here I would name my spouse's income or spouse's paycheck. You can change the icon if you choose. And then I know this is the income group, so then I'm just going to go ahead and save it. And now I've got my additional income. So here, if you have any other additional income you want to add, such as child support, trust, alimony, then you'll add these in this section here. Next, you'll look through the expenses. Like I said, Monarch comes standard with a lot of categories. Some of them are redundant, such as mortgage and rent. You don't need both. So I'm going to go ahead and disable this. To disable a category, you'll click directly on the category, and then you'll scroll down to the bottom and click on the disable button. And then you'll click on disable category. Now you can also rename them. So you can click directly on here. If you wanted to rename it, then you can just change it from rent to rent and mortgage, or rent or mortgage, whatever it is you want it to be named, and then you can save it so that it is more reflective of something that makes sense to you. You can also reorder these over here so they can be in an order that makes sense to you. Some people like to put these in order based on due dates. So this is due 1st of the month, this is due 2nd of the month. Some people like to do them in order based on what's most important to them. So you can reorder those however you see fit. Now, one thing you might come across as you are disabling things is there may already be transactions assigned to that category. So for instance, let's say I wanted to get rid of this gas one and put it into public transit. So I'm going to go in here and I click on disable. It's going to give me this warning that I have 110 transactions that are already going to the gas category. So you have to reassign them to a different category. So I will just select, where do I want these gas ones to go? Let's say I want it in a different transportation one. I said public transit, so I'll put it in there, and then I will hit disable category. Once I disable this, all of those transactions that were previously under gas are going to go under public transit. So if you come across that, you'll just want to ask yourself, where do I want these old transactions to be moved to? Now you're going to go through all of your expenses and you're going to ask yourself two questions. Can any of these be combined? Are any of these ones that I can completely get rid of? And then you'll go through, rename, disable, combine as needed. Here's something important to note if you're using the category budgeting. The order that you see here is the exact order you're going to see once you go to that budget tab. So as I scroll down to my expenses, this order that I see here, I see bills and recurring first, then I see housing first. So that order that I see right here is exactly what I'm going to see when I go to the budgeting tab. I can reorder these by pulling housing up, or I can pull up auto and transport, and whatever I do over here is going to change what it looks like on the budget section. I'm going to put the bills back on the top, and then also for each of the lower level categories, whatever order you see here is exactly what you're going to see over on that budget tab as well. So here we see rent and mortgage. I'm going to jump over here to my budget, and I'll see the very first thing I see is that bill section, rent and mortgage, then phone, gas, and electric. Go back to the categories and I'll see that exact same thing. Rent and mortgage, garbage, phone, gas, and electric. If you're using that flex budget, the general principle is the same in that these categories that you see down here are going to be in the same order as you see them here, but they're going to be a little bit different because you're looking at the three big groups, the fixed, the flexible, the non-monthly. And on this category setup screen, it doesn't give you that option to see it in that view. You see it in the same view as if you were using that category budgeting template. Okay, and finally, we have transfers. Transfers, you really shouldn't need to do anything to, so we can just leave that alone. Step 4 is to review your transactions to set up rules and tags. This is probably the most important step before we look at the budget, because if you don't have your transactions categorized correctly, then you're going to be using inaccurate data to create that budget. So let's go over to that transactions tab. Every purchase, payment, or transfer should automatically show in this section. Before you build your budget, you'll want to try to go back to at least the last month and make sure these transactions are categorized correctly. That way you can make a realistic budget based off of your past spending to estimate some realistic numbers. So what you're doing is you're going to look through this column here to see, is this the correct income, expense, or transfer category. So as I go down here, I see Netflix. For me personally, I like for Netflix, HBO, Paramount, that kind of stuff to be in the subscriptions category. Typically, they're going to be in this entertainment and recreation category if you still have it. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to subscriptions. If I already have a subscriptions category, I can just start searching for it and it'll pop up. If not, then I could click on create new category from right here. So if you notice there's a different category that you hadn't added, you can do it from right here. I'm going to go ahead and click subscriptions to update this. But when I click it, there's a pop-up that's going to show up on the screen that shows, do I want to create a rule? And I do want to create a rule because every time that Netflix comes through, I want to move it to that subscriptions category. So I'm going to walk you through that. So I'm changing this to subscriptions. Down at the bottom right, do I want to create a rule? Yes, I do. So I clicked on create a rule. Now, if the transaction matches the criteria over here, there's a lot of ways you can change the criteria to create a rule. Then I want to apply these updates over here. And there's a lot of changes you can apply to it. Specifically for this, I just want to change the category. So whenever the merchant name exactly matches Netflix, I want it to update to this category of subscriptions. And then I see there are 55 transactions already. So I'm going to select that and then I'm going to preview the changes to see if this is really what I want. So I see Netflix. Previously, these have been categorized as entertainment or recreation, and now they're going to move into subscriptions. So yes, I do want this to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and click that save button. It's going to apply to all of those transactions. So I don't have to go one by one in order to make those changes. You can do a bulk change for updating these categories. So I'm going to go ahead and apply to all 55. And now every time I see Netflix, it's going to go to my subscriptions category. I am going to do the same thing with this Disney Plus. I'm going to go ahead and change it from entertainment and recreation to that subscriptions category. And then I will go ahead and create a rule. And I will apply it to all of the previous ones. If needed, you can click on that preview changes to see if what you think is changing is actually changing. Then I will click save and it's going to update all of my Disney Plus items to be subscriptions. So you will go through, you will update your transactions to make sure they have the correct category, and then you can add rules like I did to make it easy moving forward so you don't have to do a lot of work inside of here. The other thing you can do is to add tags if you wanted to get more granularity into your spending. So one of the things I like to do for my travel and vacation spending is to just put it all in one big category, travel and vacation. So when I go to travel, any hotel spending goes into travel and vacation, any food spending, any entertainment we do on the vacation is all going to that one category of travel and vacation. But if I wanted to get granular and to really see what did I spend on food or what did I spend on the lodging, then I can do that by using tags. So you'll see a couple of these transactions here already have those tags added. So this one here has the tag of travel, food, and New Mexico road trip 2025. If I scroll back up, this travel and vacation here has the tag of New Mexico road trip 2025. So you can use tags to get granular if you really want to when it comes to your spending. So in order to do that, you would click on the very far right to expand this transaction. And then there is a section called tags. You can edit these tags here. You can create new tags. And then you can select whichever tags you want them to be on. So let's say this is actually all of these tags. I can select all 5 of these tags and then go ahead and click off, and that's going to save it. So now I see all of these tags on this one transaction versus it having the 2 tags as before. All right, now we are at that budget section to create your budget. This is what we have been working towards. So when you are on this page, I want you to think of it as a plan for what you are expecting to earn for the month and what you are expecting to spend for the month. On here, you're going to see 3 specific things that are important. The budget, that is what are you planning to earn or what are you planning to spend. The actual is what is actually happening. So this is going to read your transactions for the month and let you know this is how much you've spent for the month, or this is how much you've earned for the month. And then the final column will be what's remaining based on what you put down here as your plan. So when you are going through here, you can click wherever you set the budget, and inside of here it's going to show you a bar graph. Each one of the bars, if you hover over them, it'll show you the exact dollar amount of what you earned or what you spent over the last couple of months. And you can use that to set realistic targets. So with Melanie's paychecks, I can see they've been 10,000, so I can set this to be 10,000. So you'll set your income up based on what you expect to earn, and then you move on to the expenses section. So for the category budget, remember you are going to set a dollar amount for every single category that you are planning to spend money in. So you can look in here in order to see the historical data. If you find that there is no historical data, that tells you one of two things. One, you either have transactions that are not categorized correctly, they are miscategorized, or you have not had this type of expense before and it is a new expense that is about to start. So if you think that you should have transactions for one of these categories and you don't see anything, then you might want to go back through your transactions and make sure they are categorized correctly. So once you have looked in here, or if you already know the amount, then you can just put down what is the expected amount I plan to spend for this particular category. So you'll do that for all of your categories. And then at the end, you'll want to pay attention to these numbers on the far right side. That's going to tell you how much do you have left to budget. Your left to budget is based off of the income you're coming in minus all of the expenses you have listed down here. So if your left to budget is in the negative, that means you're planning on spending more than what you're planning on earning this coming month. So you will need to rectify that and determine how are you going to make up for that gap of income compared to your expenses. If you are in the green, I will change this to show you that. If you are in the green, then you'll show that you have money that is still left over to budget. You have some that you can still allocate to specific things. And throughout the month, as you are using this budget, you can also use this section to see how are you tracking in comparison to your expenses that you planned versus the expenses that you have actually spent. So here I can see the budget for the expenses is $9,640. What has actually been spent for this month is $9,584. So there is $56 left. And we are in the middle of April. So if you notice that and you're like, wow, we still have 2 more weeks to go and you only have $56, that could be a problem. Or maybe if you're not going to make any more spending for the month, then maybe it's okay. But this can help you to see where you are in relation to your income and in relation to your expenses. If you click directly on that expenses tab, then you'll see a breakdown of all of your groups and how you have spent in regards to each one. You'll also see that if you just scroll down on the screen. So like home improvement, the budget is $1,000. What we've actually spent this month is $390. So we still have $610 to spend. But then if I go to groceries, I see my budget is $0. I've actually spent $1,496, so I'm over budget by $1,496. So where is that money going to come from? So that is essentially how you're going to set up your budget if you are using the category budget. Let me flip over to the flex budget to show you that one. All right, on that flex budget, you are going to fill out that income section in the same way that you did the category, so we're not going to take a look at that. What you are going to want to update is the fixed numbers, the flexible, and the non-monthly. In the fixed, you are going to put that same dollar amount for each category for all of your bills and recurring monthly expenses, so you can know what's the total of my fixed bills, those bills that I have every single month, what is that total? And you're going to see that at the very top, and then in that actual column, of course, you're going to see what have you spent so far towards those fixed expenses. Then below that, you've got the flexible. With the flexible, you are going to have to set the dollar amount that you want to spend towards that stuff. So right now I can see that I have allocated $4,620 towards the fixed bills. What's left to budget now is $5,540. So what you might want to do is to look at your non-monthly expenses next and start to decide how much do I need to set aside for each of these non-monthly expenses that I have in here. So home improvement, I want to set aside $200 each month for that. Auto maintenance, I want to do $100 for that. Charity, I want to do 100 for that. And one of the things I'm noticing is you may notice that some of these are not in the right category once you get into this section here. You can change them to go into the fixed category or the flexible category if you notice that. So charity, that is actually going to be a fixed expense that I'm going to give to every month. So I'm going to move that to fixed, and I will show you again how I did that. I hover in the white space. There's a settings icon that appears. I click on that settings icon, and then I'm going to change it to a fixed expense, and then I will save it. And now that's not going to be in my non-monthly section anymore. So as you're going through, if needed, you can use that settings icon to move things to the fixed section or the flexible or to the non-monthly section. So with the non-monthly, most likely you want to be setting aside money for these things, these bigger expenses that come up once, twice, or just sporadically throughout the year. Once you have this number set, then you'll see what do I have left over to spend on everything else. So right now I'm seeing $5,140. So you can commit to up to that amount for your flexible spending. So I'm going to go with $4,000. So that $4,000 is going to cover all of these categories that we have in this flexible section. So groceries, shopping, clothing, all of that is going to be covered by this $4,000. Now you don't need to set specific dollar amounts down here, but if you want to, you can. I know that sometimes it can be helpful to set a target amount for those categories where you want to try to stay within a reasonable amount. So let's say for groceries, I want to set a target of 800, and then that'll help you to see exactly how you're tracking compared to what you want to spend in those specific ones. But you don't need to do that for all of the categories, and you don't even need to do it for any of them, but it is an option when you're in this flexible budget. One thing I wanted to note for non-monthly, normally when you're using the non-monthly option, these are set to roll over. If you are not familiar with rollovers at this time, I would say go in here to your settings and turn it off from rollover. So this is going to be turned on. If you see that yours are turned on and you're confused by it, then I would just turn them off so that you don't have to worry about that until you can get to a place to look into it. All right, that is how you are going to create your budget inside of Monarch. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks for being here today, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.